was just talking about the fact that the importance of solidarity, the importance of people working together and having a common interest, and how our social isolation works against that, and could probably be blamed for a lot of the problems that we have as far as people not having justice and not having economic equity. So I think that what we'll do at some point within the next couple minutes, I would like for everyone to go into breakouts so that they can get a chance to answer some questions that I've come up with here. Let me start off, first of all, by just introducing the approach that I want to take here. I want to maximize conversation and participation. I do not have a program planned. I do not have any kind of specific agenda beyond the launch point and some of the ideas that are being introduced here. And I want people to be able to contribute and also help to shape the direction of the conversation based on their own experiences or their own questions that they're bringing into this space. The idea that I'm starting out with is that because we are socially isolated to a large extent, and there have been a lot of people who have made comments about this, um, it really does interfere with the way that we work together. And so the challenge, if you accept that premise, is how do we change that condition? How do we alter it? What do we do to actually bring people together and help them understand and the importance of interdependence and the importance of combining our energies to make things change, to bring about the kind of change we're looking for? And what stands in our way? What kind of things are actually impediments to our coming together and working together? But we'll go a little deeper into that. I would like for you to consider those questions. The first one that I'm going to just put in the chat so you have it as a reference. And when you go into the breakouts, the initial breakout here, I would like you to maybe discuss this. And then when you come back, we can, as I said, we can go deeper into this. So I'm just going to set things up. So the premise being that the basis of building solidarity is increasing our communication, of being able to really reach out to people and tell them about what we're doing, but also to listen to them and find out what they're looking for. So my initial question then, the one that I'm presenting to the group, which I just put into the chat, is how do we encourage more communication? Any reflections on anything that you were talking about while you were in the breakout?
Yeah, I made an intentional community.
Yeah,
Yeah, close to my house.
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, so where are you going to go with that?
I'm going to go check out their website and I'm going to see what my friend Kathy comes. Maybe she'll give me a ride up there.
That's perfect because that's something that she's kind of looking for too, right?
Yeah, but I mean, what I found out was this person has information about Oregon too. She wants to go to Oregon. He
Oh,
said that
right.
they have a lot that he has information on groups in Oregon.
Wow.
So it's like magic.
Yeah, well, TC, wherever you are, magic happens. That's been my experience. So,
Oh, really?
yeah, TC and I have been hanging out in this room every Friday night, and sometimes we have company, and a lot of times it's just the two of us talking. So I've gotten to know TC pretty well. But does anyone else have anything to offer on the question of how do we encourage more communication among people? Because my own view is it's very important. Maybe it isn't important, but what do you think? Are there any other ideas on that?
Well, you've already done it.
We
Me and
started?
well, yeah, Ron and I were in a room together, and we just totally clicked. So there's some communication for you.
Yeah.
And it's just so nice to meet people with whom I'm politically aligned. So
Yeah.
that was what we talked about. And then we talked about like the good things that happen when communication is going well, if you have a political movement and the campaign is effective and people understand the message, and people get together and work together to do especially mutual aid.
Hmm.
That is what actually does change things. That relationships, I think there's a lot of relationships in politics that are kind of like transactional.
Hmm.
you know well, I didn't use this example in our conversation, but one of the ones that always surprises people and puts people on the defense, even though I campaigned for Bernie Sanders. He is very quiet on military spending in the state where I live in Vermont, where he's the senator.
Hmm.
And it was so hard to like watch him go around the country, talking about the military industrial complex, and then know that, he made a bargain here in Vermont that he would stay quiet on the F-35 basing when, he was allowed to get funding for some community health centers. So there's all these, transactional elements in politics that kind of turn everyone into a hypocrite. And I think the only way that we can really solve that is by creating organizations and structures that meet basic and fundamental human needs. That's what brought me here to talk about mutual aid.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Are you involved with anything like that right now?
Right now, I'm involved in a layer of activism with, I'm doing a lot of different things. I do it like mainly clean water activism, and I work on PFAS issues, PFAS forever chemical contaminants.
Uh-huh.
We have a situation playing out in the small town where I live in Vermont, where a millionaire who ironically owns the local natural food chain wants to put in an artificial turf field at our local high school a mile away from our town wells. So I'm active in that, and I'm on the planning commission in my town. So I guess what I'm trying to say is like I do like a layer of activism, but I'm
Hmm.
not. I'm closely affiliated with some mutual aid groups, and so I sometimes benefit from that as far as my own needs. And I do a little bit of that, like making soup for people and stuff like that. But um, yeah, I'm not as involved as a lot of other people I know in the activist movement locally where I live.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like what's the name of the town you're in?
I'm in Heinsberg, Vermont.
Okay. Sounds like that town has some action going on there anyway. It sounds like there are people doing things, right?
Yeah, we have an amazingly broad conservation community here. It's a rural community with about 4,500 people living here. There's a lot of, farms still around, and then there's pressure from the state to become a quote unquote suburb. We have like 500 new units of housing coming in, which is a big um, thing for such a small community. So we're, going to go through a lot of changes in the next 5 or 10 years. And, the ecosystem, it's just sad because, like I sort of see like settler colonialism as like a invasive species, like
Mm.
when you look at like the way that we spread out in networks around the state of Vermont, chopping down trees and putting up houses that are not for the masses, but for the, people who are the most comfortable. It's hard to watch. So that's the thing that has gotten me involved. And I'm just lucky because I mean, I think you can be lucky anywhere, but the activist community here is just strong and very grounded, and there's a lot going on.
Well, that's
So,
very encouraging to hear that. And one of the things I think that can help other communities and people who are really looking to form those kinds of activist groups would be to hear about stories like that and just to hear about what's going on. And that's one of the reasons that I really believe that if we can start building some kind of a network of communities that are involved doing this, and it would surprise me if somebody hasn't been doing that, building that kind of a network. If they are, then I don't know about it. But if anyone else knows anything about um, attempts to link together um, communities that have strong activist roots and actions, um, I would certainly like to know more about that. Is there anyone else that has a story like Morgan's about their community where there's action? Yeah, Jim?
Yeah, so your life is your form of activism. I mean, when we talk about protesting, it's not what holding up a piece of cardboard on the road, and that's contesting. You are going against something.
Yeah.
Protesting is what you're actively doing. That's what activism is, and that's how you live your life. Um, so, in suggesting what we are, how we orchestrate our lives is that form of activism. And when we assemble in community, then we are trying to leverage that activism by encouraging other people. And so communication and addressing the social isolation pieces are huge in
Hmm.
community. So I was in the small group with TC, and we today out here at RIC, he's only about an hour and a half from us, TC is. So but we're hosting a small group that's out here doing a LARP. They're like Dungeons and Dragons friends, and they're all dressing up as like Dungeons and Dragons characters and running around our property. And it's like, that's not our thing, but cool. We're hosting that community here. And we're very privileged to have that space and to be able to share that space. And so our small community facilitates small groups coming out and having things like that, just weird little things that bring people together. And so they're excited about Dungeons and Dragons. Hey, they found their people, and we'll hold their space for them. So part of holding space in this communication thing, because there is an isolation epidemic, people are incredibly isolated. The more technological we get, the more isolated we will become. And so we really need to address this disease of isolation. And one of the pieces that's very important to recognize is that people are not feeling seen, heard, and held. And in this medium, we can't exactly hold each other. So I often make this gesture right here of like, I'm giving you a hug here. I'm holding you there. And so that's my gesture for filling in that holding part. But I also want to see and hear and hold you. And one of the games that we're playing here in Limicon is the glass bead game. And one of the ways, and TC and I are both like extroverts. We like to talk. We've heard TC say, I like to talk.
Yeah.
And those of us that like to talk, that's great. But Dawn, my wife, is sitting right over here. She's an introvert. And she's really a lot smarter than I am in a lot of ways. She's kind of giggling, but she knows it. But she doesn't share those ideas oftentimes because she's very introverted.
Hmm.
And so I have to exercise my hearing part of this too. And I feel like I miss out on so much if I don't invite space. I scare off the introverts by being a big extrovert sometimes. And so in the glass bead game, when we say, hey, there's 10 minutes that we have to meet together, it's kind of a neat practice to say, hey, as we start this, we have 10 minutes. How about if we take 2 and 2? I'll take 2 minutes, you take 2 minutes, and then I'll take 3 minutes, and then you'll take 3 minutes. And that adds up to 10. And then we have this even distribution of time. And I think it's important to set up those boundaries of like, me being an extrovert, I could take up the whole 10 minutes. I could take up 10 cubed, but I want to hear and I want to hold space for other people. And so I think it's important for me to restrict myself. And I've already gone beyond my 2 minutes here, but I want to encourage that kind of a use of remember to listen. And TC and I were like, yeah, we need to hear people, man. Right?
Well, I appreciate your self-awareness, Jim, your confession. I can do that too. I have to watch myself because I can go on and on. But yeah, sometimes I have to look at the clock to make sure. But I do want to hear some other voices. I saw Lena's hand up, so I want to give her a chance too.
First off, I wanted to acknowledge Wendell and say hello because he just popped in. Or did he just disappear? Oh no, he just moved.
Oh,
Hey,
How you
new
doing?
person that popped in. How are you?
I'm okay. Just actually about to flip Super Connector on live. I just thought I would, while I'm waiting for some things to happen, I thought it would just be not lonely.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah. How does loneliness show up for you? We're talking about mutual aid and solidarity.
Oh, this one's kind of weird. I
You don't have
never.
to share. I'm
No, no,
prying.
no, no. It's fine. It's for me. It's mostly just like extreme sleep deprivation. I've
Mm-hmm.
been doing 12 to 16-hour days coding this thing for the
Wow.
last week, so I'm at the really, really crispy. Like I can feel every hair in my head right now.
Mm-hmm. No, and you're in front of a screen coding too, so that's extra because you have the blue screen and yeah,
Yeah,
and
but
the mm-hmm,
but it's such a wonderful day that, assuming everything
mm-hmm,
finishes up today, I'm going to disconnect for a couple days.
mm-hmm.
Take my dog out somewhere. She loves me and she needs to get out more. So
Yeah,
anyway,
yeah, beautiful.
well, I'm
Yeah.
glad you dropped by.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and thanks for welcoming, Lena. It's something that I sometimes forget to do when someone new comes in. So I appreciate
Yeah.
your doing that. So,
I
um,
one thing that helps me to canoe Wendell holding space, yeah. No, I can just see what I'm sensing and feeling is just, yeah, the frustration of coding alone, right? Having to just, yeah, and then you're on the screen and then you're isolated. But yeah, so I just wanted to acknowledge because you're not alone and you're probably doing really important, incredible things. So always remember the community when you're in those 12-hour stretches and that we are here, right? And we are the collective and yeah. So I I just wanted to share on that note. Oh, TC, I'm sorry. I wanted to also say, as far as community, sorry I never responded to your email. Um, and Jim, Lauren, Deb,
bye.
speaking of glass bead, Deb and I sat in many Sunday glass bead sessions together. I've been in the glass bead community for many, many years, and it's such a beautiful practice. So, wanted to make that tie to Deb and glass bead. I'm a natural bridge builder, so. Ron, I do not know you. I think I've been in a session with you. Morgan, just one of the most beautiful hearts I've met at Limicon. And yeah, hello everyone. Hello, hearts. Just the mutual aid, the healing like Jim. Yeah. Love you all so much. And yeah, I just wanted to say it's so funny being in a mutual aid and solidarity group. So I was born in Warsaw, Poland in 1981, straight into one of the biggest revolutions. Anna Valentinowicz, who started the solidarity movement in
mhm.
Poland, is actually my godmother.
Wow.
And I was one of the poster children, those hungry kids in Africa. Um, as a baby, I was actually on the posters in New York and around America. I was the poster child to educate people about the solidarity movement in Poland during the time. So. So I was literally a poster child as a baby for the solidarity movement. Yeah, and I don't get to share that story, and I don't share because my childhood was so fantastical. Eventually I'll write on it, but yeah. Oh, doggy. But yeah, solidarity is close to my heart, and yeah, how it's just so amazing. Mutual aid coming together. I remember I want to tell one story. There was a lot of political riots, right? And a lot of my current trauma, and my current disconnect, ironically, stems from when I was two, a tear gas. My parents were activists. I was out in the streets fighting for solidarity as a baby, and a tear gas canister blew across my head and exploded, and I had severe damage. And it's part of the reason why we had an early run to
Hey,
America. We were able to come here early, but that's a whole long story. But what I wanted to say was the savior that we had was my grandpa's farm in the mountains, and we were able to escape. And yeah, I remember my grandpa. And I remember the farm. He had a rabbit farm. And I just want to say how important, and my mom, I also grew up, we lived in New York and then ended up in the country. Um, I have a long, beautiful story that I'm going to eventually write on, but what I want to talk about is how nature is one of the most beautiful refuges, and it's the only way we're going to reach a sense of solidarity is through our connection to our elders and our connection to nature. And that's where the healing begins. That's how we can integrate and come together is yeah, just experiencing and touching like something that's growing, something, because we're so disconnected. Because during the time when in Warsaw, Poland, my mom was a biophysicist, my dad was a politician, and my dad's a diplomat. And yeah, I remember how sitting with the rabbits was just one of the most healing things for my nervous systems, and being with there was this little trail, and this is when I was a baby, and I still remember. And there's certain trees and certain plants that automatically calm my nervous system. And I actually talked to my mom about this, and it turns out that they were the very plants that my grandpa cultivated. How amazing is that? So, I'm just tangential right now. Eventually, I'll collect this beautiful story and learn how to really speak it in a way that's profound. But yeah, solidarity is possible, but in the United States, it's just like, whoa, like,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
There's
so
something about the whole culture that just seems to work against it. And yeah, one of the things that when I was speaking with Deb, because I went into the breakout and she was in there, and she came in actually, I brought her in. We were talking about the importance of one-on-one conversations to be able to develop connections with people, because when you're in a large group, sometimes people feel intimidated and they don't feel like they can really share what they're feeling. And even in a group like this, as though it isn't that large, it it can still be something that may hold some people back from really saying what's on their mind and what they're feeling.
how
I
do
would
you
just add a counterpoint that one-on-one sometimes is also intimidating
Mhm.
because there's a certain
Sure.
level of pressure to bring enough of the conversation and things like that. So my preference tends to be like a 3, 4, 5.
Okay. That's
Mhm.
actually, there have been people that have told me that I have one person I work with online who said the five is the perfect number, but three is good too. So actually, I mean, we could try doing that tonight. We're, just about almost halfway through. But I just wanted to get just to, if anyone would like to throw some ideas out here, what is it that really gets in the way of people communicating, of people having that sense of solidarity, of having that sense of connection? Um, what
Right.
causes the isolation? Is there anyone out there that has some ideas about that?
Hmm.
I think sometimes I think that um, it's helpful if we can be curious about other people and enter into a discussion or enter into, an exchange, not about us. Like
Hmm.
just how might you find out more? And not in a drilling kind of way, but just to be curious about, what somebody is doing and what encourages them and what makes them happy and those kinds of things and not always trying to think about how can I impress this person or how can I get my point across, but just lay all that down and be I'm here to learn. I'm here to learn all about you and what you're about and I think when you do that, then that person that you've engaged with is somebody that you want to keep coming back to, right? That's somebody that
Hmm.
now you're invested in. So you want to keep coming back to that person and learn even more. You want to find out, well, how did that go for you on Tuesday? How did that happen for you? What was that like for you? Did you do well? Did you, you know? And I think those kinds of things build relationship. And I also think that the other thing is I think we get sometimes focused on that the however people come together that it has to be some kind of a very specific mutual aid kind of thing. And I've been part of groups that were just very I'm a geocacher. I like to go geocaching, and I'm part of a little group in my community that we get together about once a month. But I'm telling you, if I had a need, they would help me. And geocaching has nothing to do with mutual aid. But I had a
Hmm.
raccoon upstairs one time, and one of the guys said, "I'll come over and get it. Thank you very much. That would be helpful." So it's those kinds of things. So it's also building relationships around where people are organically gathering. Not everybody's going to come to an intentional society, but where are they gathering and how might we as intentional gatherers develop those people, develop leaders in each one of those areas so that they can just be good leaders in those spaces and help people feel less isolated.
Yeah. That reminds me of my old housing development, which was one of the most successful, what I call unintentional communities. We just worked so well together, and somebody put in a garden, and all of a sudden people were gardening, and we never, but we had the landlord on the property. There was like 100 people, and literally everyone just like we had a listserv, and we all communicated around that. It was insane because it was so organically just like utopian. Like,
Yeah.
Can I share a quick technology that I think is also kind of helpful for breaking some of these things? Is have you guys heard of glimmers? Any shows of thumbs? Anybody ever heard of a glimmer before?
No.
So we all know what a trigger is, right? So a trigger is something that activates your negativity and you think the person is against you. And
that's
when you're active listening, instead of listening for triggers, sometimes it's helpful to listen for glimmers. Glimmers are the things that this person, oh my gosh, they're looking out for me. They care about me. And so look for areas where you align rather than areas that divide you. And so
Yeah.
rather than seeking triggers, listen for glimmers. And
Yeah, that's great. I love that. I,
Yeah. I also think like I was thinking about because you've mentioned that before the other day, and it's beautiful, but like those of us with trauma and PTSD, we have to be careful on how we define triggers because like and because, yeah, sometimes a trigger means like something different. So we should see, I think we should see both the triggers and the glimmers. I don't think we should deny the triggers and the existence because that could create a dangerous place for some people who are dealing with more intense stuff, and we could actually put ourselves in danger. So I was gonna talk to you about that, Jim, actually, hilariously, how we need to be aware of both triggers because some people, have severe meltdowns and stuff that we need to hold. And then also see our point of connection and how, because right now I'm disconnected. I feel triggered. So do I see a glimmer? Yeah, you brought it back. I see your point though, because you brought it back. Meaning, ask myself, how am I connecting to each individual? That's what I was trying to do, is see the glimmer earlier, for sure.
yeah, I want to give Ron a chance. Ron?
Yeah, I try to contribute that, the challenge with communication, mutual aid, I think is kind of like a circular challenge where any new relationship or any relationship essentially is an opportunity to be like subjugated, right? Like you meet a stranger and we inherit a world of transactional ecosystems and that force our behavior to be in a specific way. I make the argument that, right, the most common form of interaction any of us have with a stranger is exchange. We're buying something and we're giving them something and taking. So it's an exchange by nature is taught, right? Where you want to maximize your advantage and minimize your outputs. So the challenge is that to be genuinely open in a society where the average stranger, is going to be a transactional relationship, it requires a certain level of, personal material needs, right? I think to be met before you can enter the world and genuinely be open to the stranger, because again, it's an opportunity to be kind of subjugated, to be taken advantage of. So how do we kind of flip that script? Well, that's part of the challenge, right? Mutual aid groups kind of provide us a framework for collective action and raising the collective material conditions, which then lessen the need to be on the defense. Your priors kind of bring you into a moment where defense is the natural thing, because historically, if you are not in a position where your, let's say, basic material needs are met, anyone who might seek to take advantage of you could do tremendous damage to your well-being. So I think it's this kind of circular issue where it's difficult to cultivate a true openness in a society where exchange transaction is the primary means of interaction. So it kind of comes back into that kind of circular thing where it kind of self-references itself. Oh, it's why am I not more open? Well, because everything about the world is trying to take from me, right? Everything about and I have to kind of be in that mode to survive. So it's really interesting. I think part of it might be a kind of, communication might require a larger narrative of the possible, right? A larger amount leaning into the imaginative. But that's easy to talk about here at Limicon. I don't know about you guys. It's not so easy to talk about when I'm hanging out with the parents from school, like that. That's not. So it's a very different kind of frame of how we approach it. I don't really have an answer. It's just kind of, it's top of mind based on the conversation we were kind of talking about.
No, I think that's a valuable contribution because I think the transactional nature of our society or, our interactions is a serious problem. And um, I was just in a group, wasn't associated with Limicon, but it was another group I was with, and we were talking about ownership and the idea of owning things, and how that, I mean, everybody says, well, yeah, I want to have this much. I want to be able to have access to what I need to survive. But when you have ownership that's emphasizing, this kind of perpetual aggregation, constantly getting more and more and building up more and more to the point where it's denying other people access. Um, that's when you have the real problem, and that's why we have this inequality in our society that's really, really doing a lot of damage, I think. TC, what's on your mind?
When you talked about glimmers, it made me think about paranoia. You have paranoia and then there's pronoia. And paranoia is when you think everybody's out to get you, and pronoia is where you think everybody's out to support you. And why we live in a culture that teaches paranoia instead of koinonia, when we're actually all loving, giving creatures, if we're left to our own device, if we fall into the truth of ourselves, we just want to live and give to somebody else. We're trapped into this thing of thinking everybody's out to get us, so we must be out to get on and everything. So I just think that um, we could go a long way by just changing the way we think about life.
But why
Because
do
I
you think
know
that? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
there's nobody in this room that's out to get me. They're all out to support me. I know that. So,
But why do you think that's happened? Why do you think we've gotten to this spot? What brought it about?
well, the people that are in power tend to indoctrinate people in a way that keeps them in power.
But why do they feel the way they do? What made them into these kind of, I mean, we see them as these kind of sociopaths, right? So what made them into the sociopaths that they are, right? I guess that's the question. I'm not looking for a specific answer from UTC. I'm just throwing it out there to understand, the pathology of our culture. And I mean, I have a lot of ideas of my own about that, but I guess one of the things that, if we can feel that people are really going to do things in our best interest, we have to feel that somehow or other, you know, we know them well enough and we can trust them, right? I mean, doesn't trust isn't that really a huge part of this? And if we
Mm.
lack that trust, then where are we at that point?
Ah.
Um,
Yeah,
I see.
trust
Yeah,
is
Jim.
absolutely foundational. Trust is
Mhm.
absolutely foundational. Without trust, you don't really have anything. And we do live in a society where, as a man, I'm not sure if I can trust myself. I can't trust
Oh.
other men, and I'm not sure if I could trust other women. And women are like, I'm not sure if I could trust myself, other women, and I definitely can't trust men.
Mhm.
And without trust, there's nothing. You got nothing. And
And
so trust is grown. It's I can't go out there and squeeze the tree harder and make fruit pop out of it. It takes time and it takes commitment. And that is really what investment means. Otherwise, it's exploitation.
ah.
And so there's a lot of people that confuse the two between investment and exploitation. And so investment is the willingness to, I mean, if we're in an attention economy, me giving my attention to you, I'm investing, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that. Well, I heard something. I'm going to throw this out quick, and then I'll give you a chance, Lena. I heard one of my associates that comes into one of my other rooms said that it takes 20 hours before you can really get to a point where you feel like you even know somebody in the most superficial way, and 40 hours to get to a point where you really get to know somebody well so that you can start to understand who they are. And I think that understanding and appreciation and knowledge of how someone is going to behave is a big part of the trust, of developing trust. So just familiarity and spending more time with people. But go ahead, Lena.
I was just gonna say that it's hard to develop trust when people lack values. Like one thing that I run into, my distrust, um, is built around I have a set core of values, and it's really hard for me. And this is not like we're all different, but it's hard for me to trust people who don't align with my values. And I'm like, okay, I'm unpacking that on my own, like why that's happening. But I'm very, I'm very intuitive, but when I'm wounded, my intuition turns into pure judgment, and I know I can be harshly judgmental. And I think these are the things I'm owning that a lot of people, and I'm radical honesty, I'm showing up, I'm doing the work, right? My judgment, my like grasp of my values, like I'm always right. And that's where my distrust builds. So how I think that's what a lot of people like my way or the highway, and that's what builds distrust in them towards other people
Mhm.
is you build your rigid internal dialogue and structures. And so my new kind of inquiry is how can I not break down those walls? How can I create a beautiful fence with a door and let people into my garden, right? Instead of so yeah. But I think the rigidness that we develop because we're hurt, we're all wounded, right, Roger?
Oh,
Like
yes,
every single one of us
absolutely.
in this room. Can someone raise their hand who has never been wounded? Sorry. I'm just like, yeah. So how do we connect around our wounds without being scared of each other? Right? We're scared because I mean, I'm highly judgmental, but judgment, yeah, makes
Well, you're self-aware too, which is a wonderful thing. I complimented Jim on that earlier, and I think when I'm with people who are self-aware, I think that's a huge plus. And yeah, I mean, we're all wounded, but some people can't see that their wounds, may be affecting their judgment, maybe causing
yeah,
them to be that way. And so that's it, to get them
exactly.
to a safe space. I know you've mentioned brave space, which is, I guess, where you are able to come out, where you can be yourself, even in situations which may not be as amenable to you as you might want. That's a huge step too, right? Coming
Mm.
out that way. Deb, what's on your mind?
Well, I'm just noticing what Carla put in the chat, and I think um, she makes some really excellent points there around what are some environmental reasons that we have, not like nature environmental reasons, but societal environmental reasons, like why we're isolated in terms of, things like housing and school systems and lack of gathering places and those kinds of things, the infrastructure in which we live. And I'd be really interested to talk about that a little bit because I think before you can get to some of these places of extending trust, you have to actually meet people. You have to actually interact with people. And then when we're building the infrastructure of our communities in such a way that people's paths don't cross, or when they do cross, they're very structured, like schools. You do this at this time, and there's no time to chat. And so I think Carla, you make some really excellent points um, around isolationism.
Yeah, I agree. As a matter of fact, I think there are the elements of isolationism that you can identify in our current society. But I would also like to, I guess, think about why some of these things have come about too. I mean, let's just take housing, for instance. You know, what created that? What brought about this single family home? Is it simply because people always wanted to have more space and more privacy, or are there other factors involved that create that? And then, you know, when you mentioned the school system and individual grading, creating a competitive, you know, kind of situation that causes a lot of fear, I think. I mean, school was a horrible experience for me most of the time. So I certainly, actually, I'm kind of focused on trying to do something to about that, more or less. But I won't get into that right now. But all the things that you're mentioning here, you know, lack of gathering places. Um, you know, why did these things develop? You know, what are the things that actually brought those things into existence? Um, that's a good question, I think.
So funny how every single one of our like systems is so highly manipulated. I mean, we have what's called within our city planning infrastructure, we have riot-proof architecture. Like our cities are decentralizing their meeting places on purpose so that we have no places to gather. I can, if anybody's interested in that, like I can link you to architects who deliberately put these systems into place to decentralize so that people, and then we have brutalists like, why? Because the government needs all the control, and if the people gather, we have the power, and it's so they're pretty much from every angle riot proofing so that we don't reach a place of solidarity. So we have to come back with resistance, 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 because it's just so, oh, I'm gonna mute. It's just such an infuriating. I study design and I'm just like heartbroken. It's nowhere else is it like this in the world. So I mean, that's the US versus other places. So Carla, that was a really good point, and how the infrastructure, yeah, it's sad.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting to note that the history of the city, for instance, was a history of like fortifications and defense. And and so there's almost that lineage that's there. And cities, for me, you know, I feel like I'm very sensitive to a lot of things. I often have been in cities where you just feel like you're a stranger and there's no, you know, it's just like cold and feelingless and people passing each other, you know, not making eye contact. And I think that kind of environment creates more paranoia or more fear that just, you know, you really can't trust people, that you know, that who knows what that person's thinking or who knows what they're going to do. And the more people, I mean, it almost is like a sensory overload having all these people around you all the time. And if you accept the notion of telepathy, for instance, that we're able to actually sense each other's minds and what goes on, I mean, a place like that is total cacophony, right? It's just like there's no cease from all the input, all the stimuli that goes on there,
And
which causes us to shut down.
which
Right?
also
The,
causes
the,
our the psychopathy. I really do believe
Yeah,
in studying urban planning and neurosci that that's what actually breeds. How many psychopaths do you find in natural areas and in rural areas, and how many do
right.
you find in urban? These structures, everything you're saying, breeds isolation. I think we either isolate or become sociopaths, like one or the other. Or
that
we
doesn't
find,
Yeah.
seem very hopeful.
or we find, you didn't let me finish, Morgan, or we find community and do what we're doing right now.
Do what
There's
we're
three
doing
options.
now. That's
Okay.
right. That's right. It's not
Yeah.
hopeless.
No.
Yeah. I think
We're,
it's good to think about like what we can do,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
think like, like Jim was talking about, acting out with what you believe, acting on what you're values are. And
Yeah.
I feel like, like one of the reasons I'm really doubling down on environmental activism right now in Trump's America. It might seem kind of weird, but Trump is eroding, environmental protections. But the real thing is that I think, the way that we're poisoning our environment affects everyone, and it's an issue around which I could build unity and potentially, bring some people who might be more right leaning, who might otherwise be drawn into other right leaning activities at this time in history, and bring them on board with something that's for the good of all. And I know that that's, maybe a little bit of pie in the sky, but I saw Deb's question, and how does planning work on your committee? And yeah, just first of all, I just want to say, I think like a great thing to do is learn about your town government, like get involved in it at some level, join an activist organization. And I know that people here are already doing that sort of thing, but just like volunteering, because the more involved you are in your community, the happier you're going to be. I am an introvert, so I actually self-isolate quite a bit. And Limicon is really helping me to kind of break free from that. But being on the planning commission is really cool because I have the ability to share my perspective when we're making decisions about the future of land use, the future of housing, like design elements, like how housing is allowed to be constructed, how tall buildings can be, how we protect the wetlands, how we protect the river corridors, the floodplains, just like what are we doing to maintain the natural beauty of the area? How do we protect the farmers, business people and industry? And I have to sit down with a group of people with whom I have like widely varying perspectives sometimes. Like one of the issues that we had was the ephemeral, the vernal pools that show up every, in the spring, and that's where the amphibians breed. And obviously the amphibians are critical to, the ecosystem, and, they help eat the insects that, may be harmful to us. And, they're our friends. And there was somebody who got on the planning commission simply because he didn't want to, he thought it was ridiculous that people should have to protect vernal pools. But then, I'm having a conversation with somebody like that, and I can bring in points like, do we really want to have more, you know, uh, mosquito-borne illnesses in town, because, and then like, when it comes to the floodplains, I just say stuff like, this is our collective flood insurance. It really doesn't, it doesn't cost us much to just protect this and take care of this. And then, you win some, you lose some, but the thing is, like right now, like democracy is under siege. And if we don't participate in democracy, like, participation is what makes democracy work. And it has never worked. It has never worked completely in this country. And so, we still need to extend the promises of democracy to everyone, which is why, like when I first got involved in activism, I thought the activism was standing on a street corner with a sign, and I thought that would be enough to make change. But it's really like there's such a depth to the level of organizing that needs to happen. And I think like seeing people not as, Republican or Democrat, but seeing people as humans with needs, and then figuring out how to reach people, how to communicate in such a way that people want to get behind a campaign and do something for each other. That's really a cool thing. Like, I'm going to stop talking soon, but I was, mentioning to our friend who left, Ron that,
Ron.
I'm on disability right now, and I was at the food shelf earlier, and somebody there who's helping me get everything together food wise, was also thanking me for my work to stop the artificial turf field. And I'm like, he's giving me something, he's doing something for me, and I'm doing something for him. And for me, that's what solidarity is. Like, that's what being in community
Hmm.
is. That's what I
Yeah.
looked for all my life. And it took me a long time, but like, it's so rewarding to be in certain spaces. And I can't emphasize enough how supportive and amazing it is if you get into an activist group where you're volunteering, and the group is really invested in healthy relationships and respect and capacity and understanding each other's limits and respecting each other's boundaries and wanting to work together and having a shared philosophy. The level of community is really, it's supportive, it's enriching, it provides personal growth. Like, it's amazing. Oh, and the other thing, just last thing is, that like this last couple weeks in my local area, we succeeded because of our level of organization. We succeeded in three people who were here in this country seeking asylum, who were detained by ICE in a very violent protest where they brought out tear gas for the first time in Vermont history that I'm aware of. And all of the people who were detained have now been released, which then, it just makes the point that, like, it's like we have a rapid alert system, and we galvanize people to come out, and then we have people at the court hearings, and we have people writing to the governor, and we have all these things that it's not just one individual person. Like, we're all doing our part, and you feel like you're part of something bigger, and you're changing something, and you're making a difference, and it feels like you want to do more. But it's like, if we all saw that, like, what we could do, then, like, we will do that more. Like, we are doing that. Like, we're going to get there.
Yeah, Morgan, I would like to ask you a question. Has your community ever considered participatory budgeting? Are you familiar with that?
I'm not familiar with that.
Participatory budgeting is where you have a group within a community, actually everyone in the community is polled as to where the money should go, right? Whether you need a new playground or a new Wingswood library or a new stop sign or whatever. So basically, everybody in the community gets together and they have a discussion about what the priorities should be. And then they put several different issues on the ballot and people vote for them. And whoever gets the most votes, that's where the money goes. So instead of having city planners or township councils, making deals behind the scenes, it's all out in the open, and people learn about the whole budgeting process that way, and they also learn how to work together, which is the magical part of it.
Yeah,
So, yeah,
we definitely could use that. We have a town manager in my town, and a lot of people are pretty angry at how it feels like there's a single
yeah.
person in charge, and then, we're paying his generous salary with our taxes, and then he's not really listening to the things that we're saying.
Well, this is the new level of activism that you want to get into because it's amazing. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a link in the chat so you can check it out. But this is direct democracy, which is, I'm a huge believer in that. I really have I have very little faith in representative democracy at this point because you can see how corrupt Washington is. I mean, that's a perfect example. But check this site out. You might find if you can get some folks in your area interested, it might be an interesting project for you to work on. And I just wanted to remind everyone that I know we are coming up to the end pretty soon, although we don't have to end. But I always like to give people an opportunity to leave when when they've reached the point where they feel complete, so to speak. that we do this every week here. In fact, next week I'm probably going to have another session in Limicon. I'm just trying to think of what it could be about. But I just want you to know that there is, we do this every week, and there's a site that I'm trying to work on, and that's to create a network of communities that are doing the kind of work that Morgan's doing, and so that they can let each other know about it and share some of their strategies. So if you want to check this out, if you haven't seen it already, um, we are working on this network, and it's a slow, slow process because people are usually, that's an interesting point, actually. How to do mutual aid at Limicon? And what would that look like? Maybe we could talk about that next week if you're interested. How can you establish a network for mutual aid?
Yeah, like if we created a mutual aid network at Limicon, what would the scope of the work be? What would that look like? And who would run it? And how would people, engage with it? And is it even possible in a virtual community? I feel like
Yeah.
those would all be interesting points of discussion, but I'm just one person, so I think it's good to poll everyone and see if others would be interested in offering like that or something else.
Any other thoughts from anyone?
I'd be interested if this continues beyond Limicon, actually.
Well, that's what I'm hoping to do. As I said, if you check that site out, I've only been doing this for a couple months now, and I've been trying to find the right venues to make it work, and it's challenging to get anything started, as you know. But something that seems to work against, the prevailing wind, so to speak, of our society, of our culture, is even more difficult. Florin.
Yeah.
Um, Islam as a religion had a has a group strategy to survive in the desert. Um, they have like a Ramadan, which is like a food sharing, mutual aid activity. People are voluntary starving and sharing the food together, for example. Or there's some policy called zakat, which is annually, like each year, end of the year, the rich people share like 3% of their wealth to the neighbors. So what I suggest here, how can we do mutual aid? We in the network, each of us, well, at least I do, I gotta commit that 30% of what I get as income, I will spend it internally in the network. And everyone who receives the money will spend also 30% of the money they receive in the network. That's what I have been working on. Yes.
Yeah. Um, what kind of reception are you getting? Do you have, are there people that are starting to participate at this point?
I am just announcing it and hosting a session about it tomorrow.
Oh, good. Yeah, that should be interesting. Yeah, maybe
Thank you.
I'll see if I can check that out. Lena.
Hey, is Morgan still here?
Yeah.
Yes.
I want to give you such a big hug. This is one of those moments where I'm just like, where I'm just like really like, yeah. I just want to thank you so much for just your vulnerability and honesty and the way you show up. Um, I come into these beautiful Limicon creations with a lot of arrogance. Not arrogance, like I am currently on SNAP benefits. My schooling is like really unstable. Like I am really scared and I'm really vulnerable and I haven't told anyone this. I'm facing a potential brain surgery. So, I'm trying to stay rooted to my dreams, but like, holy cow, every system set in place to help me right now as a poor person going through a pretty serious medical condition is like, yeah, and the truth is, all of these beautiful dreams, all of this integrity and values that I have, none of this matters in my fight for, my health right now and just my dreams. And I will live my dreams. I'm going to get through this. But it's the community, it's conversations with you, Jim, glass bead games with you, Deb. Like, it is so simple. I haven't expressed all this. Um, I've had a seizure disorder since blah, 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 right? But Florin, meeting you, like Morgan, like you sharing about like your experience allowed me the strength to really show up for myself in radical honesty and be like, holy cow, like I want to show up for my community in a real authentic way. All of these lofty dreams of starting a community, blah, blah, blah. That's what my thank you, but I want to create these dreams so that we can come together and so I can really support everyone else like they've supported me as a disabled person. But the truth is, Morgan, what you're showing me and everyone else is it's right here, right now. And the power of community and mutual aid is what's happening right here, right now. And I'm so thankful because I have days where I'm fighting the system so hard just to get the help that I need. And then I go and I write my business plan and I like go through my school and living in a normal body and mind right now is fucking hard, but being a disabled person, I just needed to unmask and I needed to just be myself, my full self. So I love you all. And I'm gonna stop masking in Limicon and just be my authentic self. So I love you all.
Well,
Oh,
we love you and thank you
Yeah.
so much for opening up and, just being receptive to like what you're hearing also. And just, I'm glad that our connection gave you that kind
It's
of courage. It's also, did you have something?
No, go on. I'll take a
I
deep.
just, I'm gonna just come on screen and just say, my niece has epilepsy. Um, we know the struggle. I'm dealing with chronic pain and also some mental health stuff, and I'm also neurodivergent. And it's not easy being in a marginalized position, especially with the Trump administration, because
Yeah.
they don't say very nice things about those of us with autism and other things going
Mm,
on as far as like are we providing value to the society, are we paying
yeah.
taxes, and like I just feel like, well, yeah, like it's true, like I'm gonna keep working, to build a better world with the energy that I have. And that's like the inherent dignity of any person, and I do hope that you don't put too much pressure on yourself as you're facing surgery, and that you just ask for more help and let the community take care of you until you can give back because you deserve it.
Yeah, and I actually just had a conversation with a good friend who was trying to tell me that, and I'm resisting so hard and sticking to these dreams of being there for all of you. But that is my fixer. And thank you for this group, Roger, because yeah, um, the vulnerability and the just integrity and authenticity that I have seen in Limicon, unmasking, yeah, because of what you said, and because of is so hard for me because I am so afraid of judgment that that's when I judge others. So the only way I can move through and stop judging others is if I stop judging myself and just show up right where I am, right? So I just wanted to unpack that and show up and be like, it's okay, I am held here, even though like I'm not held by the government. I've had really shitty partners. Like I am held here, right now in this moment. We're all talking about holding each other in our integrity and authenticity. And I was listening, petting my cat, and I was like, why am I hiding? Why am I hiding? So deep breath for all of you. And yeah, it's gonna be a bumpy road, and I'm gonna open up more and more. And yeah, find ways. It's you mentioned communication, Roger.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this was it. It's hard to being marginalized and being, you know, having this intensity of story creates an othering that is unlike any other. And that's my question, I guess. Not a question, we're done with the session, but how do we show up for each other's intensity, right? Those moments where I'm like, oh yeah, guys, hey, I'm facing a brain surgery. Da, 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 da. Like, but it was amazing how everyone held space. But sometimes I just feel like I'm projecting right now, so I'm just gonna hold that you're all holding me and that everyone's here. So love you. And Morgan, yeah, you are a true warrior, a true like integrous, beautiful human being. Your empowerment is my empowerment, and you just made such a huge difference in your honesty and integrity about where you're at with your disability. Mwah. And all of you, but Morgan, thank you.
Well,
You wouldn't be able to see those beautiful things in another person if they were not also in you. So,
Oh, I've been hiding, but here I am in my integrity back in alignment. Thank you.
well, I feel really blessed. I have to just say this. Um, I've been meeting in this room. TC, who's not here, he dropped off, but we've been meeting together for a couple months, and we're always saying how can we bring people into a space where they can have this kind of sharing and this kind of mutual support. And Limicon gave me the opportunity to at least bring you here tonight, and maybe to next week, and maybe even beyond that. It's up to us whether we want to be a part of this and keep doing this. But I will be holding this space open every Friday, every Friday night at 8 o'clock, same space. So you are always welcome here, and you can reach out other times too, because if there's anyone that needs to talk, I'm available for that as well. So, Deb.
Hey, Lena, sorry, and Morgan, I'm sorry if I missed your story earlier. Lena, I know it's rough when you have to, work within the social safety net services. I just came off of 3 years of doing it for both my mother-in-law and also my stepfather. And I'm not a lawyer, but I'm a lawyer's son, so I documented everything. And when I realized that I'd made 217 hours of phone calls, not phone calls, hours of phone calls. If anything, the frustration that you said, you're actually underselling it for real. And I understand like on a level because it almost broke me. I ended up in therapy because of it, just having to take care of it, right? I don't think I looked you up. I don't think you're in California, but if anyone is in California and needs that kind of help, boy, have I taken the long way around to learn a lot of things. And so if anyone in Limicon might need this similar kind of help, refer them my way. I can kind of maybe help people to avoid stepping on as many rakes as I stepped on, because I hate rakes. It's not my favorite thing, you know.
That's great, Wendell. There's an example right there of mutual aid.
Enjoyed.
Okay?
And I have really good advocates in Oregon right now, and I'm structuring a pretty strong team of advocates, but I've been dealing with epilepsy and my seizures since I was a child. So yeah, I there have been people who haven't showed up for me, and that's caused a lot of that's what causes me to mask. But yeah, I mean, thank you for validating how messed up the system is when your doctor could just randomly be like, oh, hey, you're gonna need this surgery, but it's gonna take a month before your insurance clears. It's like, yeah, dude,
Mm,
it's like how, like, money capitalism right there, that is just blowing. It's just like, we'll give you more medication. And it's just like I'm resisting the medication. So I'm in this place where I'm just like constantly meditating and riding my bike and eating really well and trying to join my communities. Meanwhile, my partner is breaking down in a toxic job, and I'm just like, okay, holding fort for everyone, myself, luckily, honestly, I don't have kids because, yeah, navigating this system is, thank you all. I'm gonna stop because I mean, thank you for the connection, Wendell. Yeah, that was amazing.
yeah. Deb?
Yeah, I was just going to say this. Thank you, Wendell. That was a great intro to this. I think this gives us really a nice opportunity to practice what we've just been talking about for the last hour and a half. And so my question to both Lena and to Morgan is, what might we do to support you? What types of things would be helpful from this small group that would, just as a little test in the next week, that might be supportive or might be helpful? And like Wendell, I would offer, I'm a social worker by profession, and my superpower is I can find anything on the internet. So if there is anything that I can do in any way to help you dig up a resource or make a connection, I may not speak up in a group, but I have absolutely no problem calling someplace and figuring out how to get through a system. So that's what I can offer to you all, is to be that person, or just, or just to listen to. So, but I would put that out there as an offering.
Thank you. Yeah, unfortunately, my 2 wards have passed, but that's just a life stage. It's funny. A lot of my coworkers, they're all younger than me. They're like, honestly, they're all about my son's age, and they're like, why does this keep happening to you? And it's like, it happens to everybody. It's called getting old, and we realize you're at a point where you are the elder in the family. Like, you have elders, but they're not functional the way that we are.
Yeah.
And we just have to. You find out kind of quick who rises to the occasion and who does not.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. I went through 4 years of very difficult navigating the system. My mother developed dementia in the last 4 years of her life, and had to be
Hard.
put into a facility. And I never, ever, ever, ever wanted to do that, but I was working, and there was no way that I could just leave her out. But yeah, there's so many stories like this, and when I think it's so interesting, because I thought, when it was happening to me at the time, I was thinking, if I knew about other people that have gone through this, it would have probably made it a little less traumatic, just to have to go through these things, these steps, because it does affect your mental health. There's no
Oh, yeah.
question about it, you can't survive this without, you can't go through this without, really cracking. And I wasn't really in a great place before I started. So yeah, we're all wounded, and it's so hard to see that because so many people put up a facade, that they're
Exactly.
strong and capable, blah, blah, blah. They don't want to be seen as, by other people as having these challenges.
Well, I think coming from an immigrant family in America, it makes it even worse. Like yeah, that's a whole nother, I won't pity party, but I pretty much lost my support from my parents because I couldn't step up in school and when I was younger and I was hospitalized my last year of school um, and yeah, that's why finishing this grad program is so important to me right now, is because my mom's passing. And it's just like, I don't want to be in grad school at all, but it's for my mama, because she's really doing a lot of healing, knowing that I'm pursuing my higher ed. She was a bio, like I said, and who knows where that'll take me, but yeah, it's just strange how I'm going through all of this. My mom, yeah, I'm caretaking from a distance this summer. I'm dedicating to going back to my mom's and caretaking for the property. So it's like taking care of myself and taking care of my mom and right now my partners going through a job change, which is gonna help us. But yeah, I mutual aid is right now, I think the only way we can really create this society is if we're this radically honest. We have to be, connected to our weakness. I think our weaknesses see our strengths, but also be like, hey, we are all in vulnerable places, and then allow those who step up to step up and realize that not everyone has the same tools and that other people like Deb and Wendell, they're like, hey, I can help you with this. And then maybe I have a yard project um, coming up later, and someone else will step up and help with that. And that's mutual aid. Not everybody can do everything too. So,
Well, that's where the communication comes in too. Um,
mhm.
I know that there are little corners of the web, corners of the net where people are trying to create these kinds of networks or, listings, things to say, I have this to offer, I need this. Um, but I think we can always use more of that because not everybody knows about them. I mean, I stumble on them once in a while, but um, Limicon could actually help, bring a lot more people together. I think one of the great things about this so far is running into people I've seen before, like Jim and you, Lena, and Deb. I've seen you and Florin and Carla. I've seen her also. So it's just really you do create. There is a kind of community that's been created here. But the question, I guess, is how will it extend beyond the end of the month? Where do we go from here? Are we willing to continue to commit ourselves to this process beyond then? And what form will that take? Um, that's something else that we can talk about. If you choose to come back next week, we can talk a little more about that, and also what role Limicon could play, which I know that Morgan had mentioned as well. But I feel blessed. So, Jim.
Yeah. When we step away into those liminal spaces to create a type of community, it kind of goes against this the traditional mode of community. I taught language for a long time, and I'm always looking at the etymology of the word. And community is also the same root as comer, to eat, and breaking bread, communion, break
Hmm.
the bread, drink the wine together, and you commune together. And So a lot of community is built around food. I'd just like to mention that. And a lot of community is built around a place that can produce food. And so it's an interesting topic, but I wanted to reach out to Carla before we check out real quick, because one of the pieces that I'm interested in is the architecture that she brought up and how we design our civilization around isolation rather than building community. And it's just something that I've always been fascinated with. And I was hoping that that would be something that maybe it's a totally different discussion, but it's something that I'm pretty fascinated in. I'm not sure if we can go out and build a city or something or a town that would emulate that. But I think it could lend itself to how we build the liminal commons and what needs to be there. I really like what they're doing with Castelia, with Florin, what he's done. I like that he's created a little campfire area, because I think campfire is a very important part of the community. At least that's how I see it, running a campground here. And so I'm very interested in how people see this. How do we build spaces because how do we build third spaces, right? Third spaces are for community, right?
Yeah.
And how do we build third spaces that are not necessarily transactional, like what you think of as a town square or something like that, that a lot of us don't really have in the United States, especially not in the Western states like California. You just don't have those town squares where the artists gather, the musicians gather, and the protesters gather, and everybody gathers, right, to spend a day together in community. So,
well, I live in one of these sprawling suburban old suburbs that's connected to the city. I live near Philadelphia, so you can imagine how, kind of densely populated the area is. And the way it's laid out, there's no common spaces. You can walk blocks and blocks without finding a common space. And of course, you have to get in a car, to do anything or go anywhere you want to go. And that's a bad thing for me, because I can't drive right now. We were talking about limitations, and I'm having a problem with my legs and feet. So I can probably get something adjusted, where I could get like on the wheel or something, but I don't have the money to do that. So I rely on other people to give me rides to places. But this car culture is incredibly toxic. And I look at it, and people just take it all for granted. And it's really added a lot to the isolation. I mean, you think about it, you see cars going down the road, you don't really see the people's faces. You just see these metal boxes you're interacting with. And, they're like cyborgs, they don't have a completely human feel about them. And so what is that doing to us, right? What kind of impact does that have on us and our interactions? So it'd be nice to be able to have a place where you could just walk to and, and hang out, right? Common house, right? And in a lot of communities, a lot of co-housing and eco villages have their common house. I always thought of it like a virtual common house, of having a place where people could just drop in and talk. But it would really, communities need that. They really do. They need to have common spaces, third places, and we're just not working towards that, it seems, at this point. I mean, some of us are, but it doesn't seem like there's enough going on right now for that.
yeah. One of the things, we went back and visited an Amish place back in Pennsylvania last time I was out there. And we went to a restaurant. It was an Amish restaurant. We oftentimes think of the Amish as having this, off-grid community. You might want to go study the Amish, right?
Yeah.
And not that you need to take their dogma with them or with it, but you try to learn from the people that are doing it. And the restaurant that we went to, they did everything family style restaurant, and so they didn't have a menu. It was like you showed up and they were making one meal for everybody, and everybody sat at a big gathering table. And there's all sorts of cultural things about this, like in Germany, it's very common if you're seated at a table for 8 people and there's only 3 of you, the waiters will bring over, or whoever's seating people will seat other people next to you at the same table. And you're like, as an American, you're like, I thought this was all ours. It's like, no, that's not how it works. It's like there's chairs here and there's seats. And, you better go with it. And here in the United States, you'll see people that are isolated. So there's a lot of things that are built around like how we design. And so I was trying to reach out to Carla, but I'm not sure she can hear. I've left a couple of messages for her too. But there's a lot of things that we can do in our design that facilitate authentic community. And Wendell and I were talking, was it last night or 2 nights ago? We were talking about the actual luau's that that the locals go to, and it's very different from the luau that the Howleys pay for, and so another piece of this too is we suffer from the disease, the dis-ease, the disease, mind. Mind. It's one of the first words we learn in the English language in our dominant culture. We're learning the word mind. And as a communitarian, community designer, and builder, I'm oftentimes one of the red flags for me when people come out. If one of the first questions they ask me is, what do I get out of it? Rather than how can I serve this? It's like, you're not even close. You're too infected. And I have to triage that person out immediately because they're looking for how they can be a parasite on the community rather than a symbiotic member of the community. And so it shows up in language oftentimes, but it also shows up in the way we design things. And so there's like some houses that I'll walk into, I'll be like, I'm not going to buy this house. And, it actually shocks me. It's like in my area, they started building adult retreats for the parents so they wouldn't have to engage with the children,
Yeah.
And like, here's the kids' playroom. It's like, why can't the kids play in the living room where everybody else, or the dining room where everybody congregates in the kitchen, right? How many of us here in the United States live in giant houses and you only use really the kitchen and your bedroom, right? The rest of the house is just kind of a ghost town. If you're functioning as a family, you really only need.
I grew up in an eco community, more or less. And I just want to state that having a separate room for children in certain instances could actually be a good thing.
Sure, of course.
My parents,
But
were crazy, and we didn't have a children's room. There were moments where I would run away to my room because I was like, my parents are really intensely like partying and having way too much fun. And it honestly, as a kid, they'd be like, include, and I just like little introvert me, it would like run to my room. And
yeah, but if you go to the real luau, I'm pretty damn sure there's kids running all over the fucking place.
no, yeah, it's a whole different
Right?
wow.
And they're not being separated by the architecture of the space, of the shared space. They're running all over the place. And kids will go build a fort out here in the forest or, in the jungle, in the woods, and they'll go find their own special spaces, if they have that kind of outdoor access. And so, but when you make that a requisite, like the kids are going to be over here, the old people are going to be over here. The old people go to Florida, the young people go into the into the education system, and the bad people go to the prison, and the good people go to the it's like we're actually designing our separation, right?
Oh yeah, it's terrible. It really is.
Sorry guys, I have to leave, but I just want to say a couple things. First, Jim, I want to connect with you again because I think we have a lot of interesting things to talk about. Again, I'm a proud architecture dropout, but I've done a lot of work in that area. For instance, remodeling my house, refused to get rid of the porch. I'm expanding it. There's a correlation between connection with neighbors and having porches versus disappearing and putting up walls, right? And Roger, just want to acknowledge you. I think in the same way that Lena was underselling things, I hope you be very kind to yourself when you think about like having to take care of your elders and having to go to like put them in homes. There's a reason why memory care homes exist.
Right.
And why most of the people who work there actually are carefully cared for as well because of how difficult it is. And you have to take care of yourself also. And it's one of those things where you only really see it once you've walked that path.
Hmm.
And again, you've done it. I had to do that too.
Yeah.
And I just want to acknowledge that you had a hard time and you really are underselling it. It really is tough.
No, it is, but it's also tremendously interesting too because, and I don't necessarily want to use the word interesting because it's much deeper than that, but
Yeah.
um, seeing not just my mother, but getting to know the other people and the other families. I
Hmm.
mean, it was a very immersive experience, believe me, and I'm sure you're aware. To the point that when we went to when my mother finally did pass away, and we were all coming over to the room, one of the people that worked there as an aide was just in tears,
Yeah.
because she just had developed such a relationship. And I was in tears and she was in tears, and it was that whole thing. So it was an incredibly I don't know. It goes beyond words, but thanks for acknowledging that, Wendell. And certainly you're right. You really can't fully comprehend or understand it until you do go through it. So yeah.
And grief is another piece that is meant to be absorbed by community. We're not designed to bear grief alone.
Very true.
We are going through all sorts of part of this isolation piece. One of the things we try to facilitate, and I'm trying to facilitate more, is the idea of grief circles.
Yeah.
And so bringing people together. And one of the main mantras is I cannot do this alone. I cannot bear
Yeah.
this alone. And that's the chant and the drums, and you get together and you weep, together.
Yes.
And in that same culture where there's the luau, because of our systems, you are forced to put your parents into a home, right? And it's a
Yeah.
very expensive.
Yes.
Anybody with extreme disabilities, my wife works with kids that are going to probably be sent to a lot of those facilities before they hit their teen years because they're so hard to work with. It's so hard to deal with. And a community, you have 10 papas, you have 10 mamas, you have all sorts of aunties and uncles, and there is a whole network. And the more we lose that, the more we're finding that this mind culture is really requiring stuff that we cannot bear alone.
Yeah.
We cannot bear handling, and we're about to get hit with the silver tsunami of all the baby boomers coming through.
Mm.
Oh,
I mean,
It's
we're
how's
going
it
to
called
have
now? The silver tsunami.
they call it the silver tsunami. It's like we're having to develop AI robots just to make sure that people don't feel totally like they feel listened to. And it's like, wow, like
Well, yeah, with all this wonderful technology, then maybe we could have UBI and we could actually have people devoting themselves to helping other people rather than having to do pointless jobs. But, we can dream, right?
well, which was more important today, your job or this?
What, caring for people?
Well, yeah, I mean, aren't you caring for people right now?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's important work, isn't it? And it's
It's the
thoughtful
most
work.
important. I say that all the time. In fact, I have this other group where, there's a number of people that are teachers, and I say, boy, and parents, raising kids, that's incredibly important work. And yet we treat this whole thing like it's kind of an afterthought, right? It's not something that we really, I had a radical idea, and that is, in villages, you have everybody kind of like milling about together. There's no real segregation there, right? By Wendell. And
Disconnect, Wendell.
and imagine, living in a village type situation where you did have, I saw this thing where there's a place where they're actually talking about having schools incorporated into all kinds of other community things that are happening, community centers, businesses in some cases. Just imagine having like working someplace and being able to see your kids during the day or something. Of course, the remote work that's going on all the time right now, right? But um, but just finding ways to incorporate the families and into their communities, and have the kids able to really have a lot more care than they're getting. Instead of putting them in a classroom where you have one teacher to 30 kids, which is ridiculous. It's horrible. I don't know how they get away with it, but there they do. But yeah, so there's a lot of stuff to be done, but a lot to talk about
Well,
too.
think about this too. What is your elementary school still around? The one place that you went to elementary school?
Mine?
Yeah.
Yeah, as far as I know, I haven't seen it lately, but
Did it
yeah.
have big fences all the way around it?
I haven't gone by it, so I wouldn't know
No,
it's really.
when you went there,
When
did
I
it have,
went there, no, not necessarily. I mean, it was pretty wide. I mean, we were free range kids, when I was growing
right?
up.
And now all the elementary schools are gated off with like it almost looks like it's indistinguishable from a prison. The
Oh,
high schools are it's the same architecture of the high school that I worked at for 20 years was indistinguishable from a youth detention center.
Well, I always felt like I was in prison when I was in school, but now it looks like it too, I guess.
It certainly does.
Yeah.
And it functions that way too. They're even eating the same food that they serve to prisoners. It's the same
yeah.
Cisco contract.
I was just I was just at the pizza shop the other day and I saw this kid junior high with his mom and it was such a beautiful conversation because he was like, Mom, he actually said, why does our school food taste like prison food? And and the mom literally it was a black auntie and cousin. I asked them because she stood up and she's like, if you don't like it, like stand up, like gather your friends together and stand up against it and protest. And I was like, whoa, that's amazing. And the kid's eyes lit up and I was like, what a freaking amazing thing to witness. And the kid was just like, and I chimed in and I was like, yeah, you're allowed to speak up. And like, but he was so disheartened and sad. But then the minute his auntie was like, you can stand up against it, he was like, what?
Well, I don't know. I spent my entire career trying to create a salad bar where we incorporated the kids in the agriculture department to grow the lettuce and the tomatoes and the onions and the bell
I,
peppers. And then it was going to go over to the home economics department where the kids could learn how to prepare the salad and that the salad bar would then be available for the students or for even the staff to eat the salad bar. And I was public enemy number one down at my district office for attempting to do that because I was going against the Cisco contracts, which also were probably kickbacking some of the people on our school board.
I, I
And
worked
so,
I worked at a school in Trinidad, California. It's near Arcata and it's on the ocean and they had a full farm to table lunch that was a part of their schooling and they also had oceanography. They would actually go on walks. Their playground was
was
the
it a public school?
yeah, it's a public school.
Was it a public charter school?
It was a public, it was a it was Trinidad's like public school. It was yeah, but the government there and in Arcata
Oh,
is
right. It's very
yeah,
different.
it's Humboldt County. It's
Yeah.
a whole different it's
Maybe it was in lumberjacks. Yeah.
yeah, it's really surreal how, but I remember, yeah, this kid. So this is just crazy how in New York City, when I worked at a school in New York City, the kids are like, where do blueberries come from? And they're like, they don't even know that blueberries grow on, they get them in the little
From a
plastic
bag.
containers. Yeah, and that's where they come from. And versus that school where the little girl's like, I'm like, what's your favorite food? She has this glimmer in her eyes and she's like, strawberries, fresh strawberries off the vine. And I was like, how do you like, and she's like, every day we pick our own fruit for fruit salad. And just the hope and I was like, versus this kid had just been like he was in a detention center, the kid who I had that experience with, and I constantly compare. And I'm like, whoa, what are we doing? Like, why isn't that the
It's quite
standard?
literally a war zone. It's quite literally a dehumanizing war zone when you go into a public school, and
Well,
especially in a urban area or a lower income area where I work. And um, the lunch period is also the shortest period
it's
of
so
all the periods because they never teach the kids to eat with silverware. They'll give them a spork, a plastic spork at
I
best,
know.
because they're worried that they're going to stab each other with it. And the excuse that they give for having the shortest amount of lunchtime, which is the only time where kids actually have free time in the secondary level to have a sense of community with one another, is a total community with their class is during the lunch period, but they shorten it so in that way the kids don't get into fights. And part of the reason why they're getting into fights is because they're never learning how to really live as a community together.
Mhm.
They're just inmates.
Yeah, this the school district where I'm at is, and I happen to know this because I know one of the uh, people on the school board, um, that they actually have, they don't go to the lunchroom now. They have the lunches delivered to the classrooms because the fighting was so bad.
Hmm.
And this something has to change here. I mean,
There's
this is what's going to happen to the future. I mean, these kids are going to grow up and they're going to have these issues, these traumas that they're going through now are going to just keep multiplying, as time goes by. Um, but I think there are things that we can do. We just have to remain
right.
hopeful and we have to remain committed.
Well, we also have to take actionable steps too.
Right.
And when I was, when we were talking about the luau's that used to happen in the community meals the other night, like we're so removed from that. Like we are so conditioned into this mind world, mind, like the seagulls in
Hmm.
Finding Nemo, mind, that we actually we become addicts to it. We become addicted to the high fructose corn syrups and the salts and everything else that go into it and the fats that are injected in. And so we become consumers of this culture to where we almost can't eat real food anymore. We
Mm.
can't behave as real humans anymore. We just become consumers rather than humans.
Well,
And,
Yeah.
and the system is designed to turn us into consumers rather than humans.
well,
So this is a big part of building community is you're actually having to take actionable steps to remove people from the addiction of modern civilization or however you want to call it. I call it modern civilization. Some people like to call it the patriarchy or what is it? Uh, when you I must be getting tired and hungry, but what is it? The culture where you go in and you take over somebody else's culture, the
Colonial.
colonial culture, yeah.
Yeah.
So wherever you want to label it, it's toxic. And so we need to start, if we're going to do anything to preserve humanity, we have to start taking actionable steps towards recognizing that this is a serious problem. And that's where your priority comes in. You're not going to get people to start growing trust until they can prioritize and realize like there's something bigger than what I want out of a community. And I have to be willing to commit to the larger purpose than what is me. What do I get out of this?
Yeah.
And that's foundational. And and the only way that you can encourage people in that field is to behave courageously in that field. You have to give up your mind.
Yeah. You have to set an example.
You have to walk the talk, or
Mhm.
else nobody else will trust you. You're just another hypocrite with a good idea or a sellable idea, maybe.
I didn't know Benji. Hi. I, I don't know you. Are you just
Are you
listening?
sure about that?
Do I know you, Benji?
I mean, we've talked a few times.
Oh, I think I did. I remember your voice. I wasn't sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I joined late, and I mean, thanks for allowing me to stay and listen.
Yeah, I saw you in the corner. I was like, hey, new person. I saw you, but yeah, I wanted to bring you into the conversation.
Oh,
Um,
thanks. Appreciate it.
yeah, of course.
Well, I appreciate you doing that, Lena, because sometimes I get so caught up in, in where I am that I can't look around me and see all the other things that are happening. So,
Oh, there's in certain groups, like if I lead a group, I'm gonna have a vibe checker. I'll
mm,
either be a co-facilitator always, because I know I can't do it alone. And yeah, the vibe checker checks around and the facilitator leads. So I
yeah,
do.
I do co-facilitation too, and we kind of work that way, but I appreciate you're taking that role. Thank you.
Hey, good evening, y'all. I got to take off. It's a pleasure seeing you.
Yeah, it's been 2 hours, but see you again, Jim, I hope.
Hey, thank you for hosting this, Roger. And good
Yeah,
to see you
thank
all.
you for
And
being
Carla,
here.
please reach out to me if if you're interested in doing that at all. I'd really like to collaborate with you. Good seeing you, Deb.
I'm
Good
gonna
night.
hop off too. It's getting late in the Midwest, so I'll see you all later. Thank
Yeah,
you, Roger. This was not really nice.
thank you. Hope to
Really
see you
good.
again.